Hello and welcome back to the Jules with Jim podcast. I am your host GiGi and I hope you're well. I just wanted to say again, thank you all so much for the support, your interest, your questions. It all goes such a long way. And whilst you're here, pretty please don't forget to hit that sub button to be notified when I do post new videos. So we managed to finish off the signs energy series. So now I wanted us to move on to talk about the planets individually. I just felt like a lot of the time we are given very surface level definitions of what the planets actually mean. So for example, a lot of the times when you do go and research what the sun means in astrology, you'll get a lot of definitions whereby they just tell you that it represents individuality, your vitality, your creativity. And, at times we don't even know what this means. I mean, there are 12 signs. So what do you mean, practically speaking? How does, a sun sign in Pisces, for example, express their individuality and creativity, etc. So, it's like now that we have an understanding of the energies of the signs, we can now move into understanding the planets, because it is the signs when put into the planets that give it a different energy. But of course I'll explain that in future videos and what that means. But for now I just want us to cover the basics so that we are on the same page and we can all follow, hopefully have a discussion and just connect about our different perspectives on what the different planets mean to us, and etc. So basically there are 10 planets, namely they are the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, and last but not least Saturn. So in your birth chart, your natal birth chart, there are 12 houses. So houses just means that there are 12 parts, there are 12 segments, there are 12 pieces that make up the chart. So think of a pie chart actually, and think of it having 12 parts to it. So from 0 degrees all the way to 360 degrees for a full circle, which is the full cycle of life, because we begin in Aries, which is the baby of the zodiac, and we end off with Pisces, which is which I'd consider then the elderly the elderly part of the cycle of life. So we have now attained all of the wisdom and kind of know exactly what we're doing, where we've also accumulated bits and pieces from every sign to understand the overall collective. So with that being said, there being 12 pieces, it's only natural that it would be physically impossible to have all 10 planets in all of your houses or in all of your rooms or in all of your pieces of your pie. There can't be planets in every house, because essentially there are 12 houses. So there will be houses which don't have any planets in them, which are considered empty. And not to say that they are empty and that there's nothing there and it's just void. Of course it will have a name, and that name would be one of the astrological signs. So basically every room will have any of the 12 zodiacs energy, because obviously there's 12 signs, there's 12 houses, so each of them will be given names. Even though there's no planets in them, they will have names. So sometimes if you're trying to figure out a particular energy of a house of yours that's empty in your chart, just look at what what that room or piece of that pie's name is. So for example, if there's no planets in room number 8, look at what room number 8 is, or what sign it's under. So it can be part or can be under any of the signs. So Sagittarius, Capricorn, whichever, can be under any sign, depending of course what your ascendant is. So your ascendant is basically room number 1. and we go all the way up to the 12th room, which is the 12th house. So room number 1 will determine the pattern that will be followed throughout your chart. It's also a very important planet, but we'll talk about the ascendant and the other houses as we go along. So having said all of that, I wanted to start off with the sun sign, because everybody knows their sun sign, right? Everyone knows, when they were born, and it's easy to look up what the meaning of that sign is, right? I mean, if you were born on the 5th of January, you'd know that you're a Capricorn. So, you would either relate to the characteristics of that sign, or you won't. Or you could be one of those people that relates to bits and pieces of, that astrological sun sign. So while I was busy doing my research on what the sun actually means, and not only in a astrological aspect, because me, I'd like to take it further. I wanted to know what the sun means, as a whole. Like, what does it mean to different parts of sciences? What does it mean to different parts of subjects? What does it mean, to people, to humanity? So I started realizing actually that, okay, so the solar system in particular is called the solar system because pretty much everything revolves and depends on it. Everything revolves around it, and most of everything that is on Earth, depends on it. And even I found that even when I'm, looking up research on, information pertaining to other planets, there would always be a reference to the sun. So, the sun is literally the star at the center of the solar system, really just the heart and soul of our birth chart. So every other planet will revolve around the sun, and the sun changes every 4 weeks into another sign. So, for this reason, we cannot take for granted its importance. So, because when it changes into another sign, it means it's now embodying other energies, because of course a Gemini sun is going to be different to a Libra sun. Naturally, that's just how it is. So it's important that we don't take that for granted. So, the sun in its essence is known for its warmth, it's known for its sunlight, it's known for its vitamin and mineral benefits. The rays of sunshine we are fortunate enough to witness daily as well. It's literally the light of our current universe, to put it simply. It is, the supreme cosmic power. If we want to be introspective, we can even attribute the sun to times in our lives when we have been down and out and literally saw no light at the end of our tunnel, because we've all gone through those moments whereby, life has been particularly tough, and we've become so enamored by, our darkness that we would have been experiencing at that time, and it would have felt that we are not seeing, the light at the end of that tunnel. I actually don't know who might be crying right now, but I do apologize for that. So, the sun is kind of the promise that, there will be light at the end of that tunnel. We go from the beauty of the night, and we will surely experience the sun's warmth and vitality, and all will be restored as we step into a new day. The sun is an important part of the chart, but I suppose, every planet aspect and part of the natal birth chart is important. I'm not going to take that for granted. It's just that the sun is important for the fact that it's the planet that describes the overall energy that will be expressed throughout that person's life. In my personal opinion, it's almost like, you're constantly expressing your sun's energy when you need to get creative, when you need to think on your feet, when you need to express your individuality, when you need to express your strengths, your when you need to express your purpose, etc., etc. The sun will determine how you go about those things. And I think it's important for us to understand that the sun's expression is not a destination. As an individual, you're constantly evolving, you're constantly working towards expressing that energy in the best way possible so that you can continue to harness growth. I think the older we grow, the more we grow in consciousness and find better coping mechanisms to deal with life and its challenges, and also grow with expressing ourselves, which has everything to do with the sun. Any aspects, of course, to the sun will greatly impact how this expression takes place. A sun in Pisces, for example, may have had an inclination to shy away from their talents, not really want to deal with the real world, in inverted commas, and may have had a lack of boundaries. But as they grew older, the challenges that they may have faced have morphed them to become more aware of their surroundings, to become more aware of how they express their Neptunian or Piscean energy. So they may have been in situations whereby they were taken advantage of and eventually decide to look inwards, instead of blaming their challenges and their experiences on outside forces. I think they come to realize that, I actually heal through self-expression, and then they start opening those doors towards creativity, and they may even soon start exposing that to the world as well, if they have the courage, which I definitely encourage them to have, because they're so beautifully creative. And that is just the nature of the sun. Eventually, with its natural influence, which is, to promote growth, we eventually start working with the energy better when we know how we are supposed to grow. So a Scorpio sun is supposed to grow to manage their emotions and control issues a bit better. A Gemini is supposed to learn to put their doubt aside, to write that book, to write those goals, to write those thoughts, to start that channel, or to even nurture the relationships that they have around them so as to not be perceived as, fake. So, to put it simply, the sun in your chart basically tells you how you need to grow in this lifetime, what you need to be striving towards. And I say striving towards because I seem to think the sun is a representation of where you need to grow, which is, of course, determined by which room or house or piece or part of your pie that your sun is in, and how, which is determined by the sign of the sun. So the sign could obviously be in any of the 12 signs. So also, without the physical sun, we would literally be non-existent, right? If we can compare a country that is, that always has like cold or icy weather. If we can compare that to South Africa, we can immediately see why certain countries aren't particularly blooming with, nature's beauty, which makes up of trees and animals, and why it would most likely have, mountain slopes and etc., etc. So the other thing to note about the sun is that its potential is just infinite. Like, the sun is literally an unlimited source of expression, creativity. It's literally uncapped, so anything can grow in the presence of the sun. Solar energy in its essence also just means derives and depends on the sun. So we could also say that, we are solar beings as well, as, we can even relate to the sun being our cosmic supreme power, because the sun is, right? So above, so below. I think every time I've heard this, I always wondered, what was the meaning behind this? I've always just had moments where I'd be like, okay, does that mean we are the universe also orbiting around the sun as other planets do, and maybe the planets are people, are humans? Does it mean that we in ourselves are a spitting image of the sun, and that the sun can be found rather in our solar plexus, which is the gut, the stomach. Is that what we should be working towards unlocking so that we can become more like the sun? There's just so many possibilities. I guess it's up to each of us to kind of determine what it means, because I feel like the meaning is going to be subjective and quite personal for everyone, because we're dealing with people here, so perception is not always linear. So the reason why I think a lot of people don't even relate to their sun sign is because of the aspects made to their sign and the overall birth chart itself. I've always made mention of aspects, in other videos, and I'm sure it may have seemed like I'm probably speaking gibberish. However, let me just give you a brief explanation really quickly. So an aspect is basically, a mathematical expression of how the planets were positioned when you were born and how they interacted within the moments of your birth. So for example, you may have a sun in Sagittarius, however, there may be an aspect to your sun from Pluto. And the aspect just depends on what it is, and that's what determines the influence of that said aspect. So there are different aspects. There's the conjunction, there's the square, there's the opposition, the trine, the sextiles, semi-sextiles, and there's various others, which I definitely will get into in future videos as to what they mean and what they are determined by, because they're determined by different factors, degrees, and so on. So I'll definitely go into further detail about that. So a conjunction from Pluto to the Sagittarius sun just means, or rather to the sun, any sun really, just means that the energies or the themes of Pluto, and the themes of Pluto are, rebirth, control, transformation, power, darkness, sex, obsession, things that are taboo, are infused and may even work in unison with that Sagittarian sun expression or with that sun's expression. So not to say that, it's less difficult, because naturally anything to do with Pluto, honestly, is not rosy, no matter what the aspect, but it could be more manageable or easier, or it could even go either way, because with conjunctions, it's literally a 50-50. It could be, a negative thing, it could be a positive thing. I think it just also depends on how the individual uses these influences, whether it be to their advantage or whether it be to their demise. So in astrology, the sun itself rules the 5th house in the birth chart, and the ruler of the 5th house is Leo. So the 5th house, or the 5th sign, is about creativity, it's about vitality, it's about children, it's about fun, passions, pleasure, the eternal child, the inner child. It's about games, gambling, and things you take pride in. Of course, there's others, but I'm just going to mention just the basics so that we don't go too deep into that, because I'm still going to talk about the houses and their meanings. So from if we think about it, from the 4th house, which represents our childhood, our roots, and early life experiences, the 5th house is how we then take all of these experiences and express them to the world through self-expression, which the sun rules. So if you were raised in, let's say, a cultural home, you may express yourself in ways that would be acceptable to that culture, because obviously you're not trying to rock the boat unless you have like some hectic Aquarian energy, or like some Uranus in the mix there with some Gemini, then it kind of changes the situation. But under normal circumstances, you will express yourself, especially when it comes to your dress code, in ways that would be acceptable to that culture. So for example, just to give you, like a physical analogy, if you were raised only to wear dresses, your fashion sense, which is what makes up creative self-expression, which is what the sun rules, which is what Leo is about, may express this. So, but then, like I said, if you have Uranus, as your chart ruler for the 5th house, remember I spoke about ascendant, so it depends which sign your house starts in, that's what will determine how the energies will play out in your chart. So if you have Uranus, as your chart ruler for the 5th, then of course you're going to be quite radical, you're going to be quite different, you may even be shocking, with how you may dress, for example. You may even be into unorthodox hobbies. People in your social circles just may not really get or really understand you. And you also may come across, as a bit unpredictable. You may have even been raised, in quite a modest upbringing, and then grow up to express yourself in ways that may be distasteful, to your family, which is what the 4th house is really about. So the 4th house relates to the moon, and then the 5th house relates to the sun. So we can already see the connection there, that whatever is groomed basically in the home, in the childhood, in the early learning stages, is what will be projected outward in the 5th house of Leo. Basically, I don't know if that makes sense, but of course, if it doesn't, let me know in the comments so that I can definitely clarify that. But the 5th house, basically, whatever you find enjoyable, whatever you find pleasurable, will be seen in the 5th house. I'll give you another practical example. If you have Virgo in the 5th house, you may come across as somebody who meticulously plans creative pursuits or outings. You may be very modest about your dating life and how you conduct yourself during courtship. But also you might have a side to you that's quite kinky. You may be into BDSM, or you might really get creative, when it comes to the lovemaking department. You might like to, experiment, if I can put it that way. With Virgo in the 5th house, your main mission really is to serve, and in all ways possible, you are willing to do just that. So, people are different, and what turns you on may be completely boring to the next person. So there is an open mind with Virgo being here, because Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So pretty much anything goes. The kinkier, the better. A Virgo 5th house may also make you a parent, as the 5th house is also associated with children. So it may make you a parent that's quite critical of your children, because you just want them to be better, to know better, to function better, to find better ways to be critical thinkers. So you may be quite critical of them only because you want them to be their best, not because you're trying to really nitpick them and tear them apart. Of course, this also depends on how the energy is expressed, so don't at me on that one. But like I said, you might be quite critical of your children, or you just may be the planner, you might be the organizer. You will just always be on top of things relating to your kids, so you will know exactly where their nappies are. You'll know exactly how their books are supposed to be stacked. You would probably pack their stationery according to colors. If they have a playroom, everything will be neatly packed, and that's just how Virgo functions. They are planners, they are organizers, they are the people that are able to see how things can be made better. So you will always just be on top of things relating to your children, and it doesn't even matter how many children you have. You could have 10 kids and you would still know everything that needs to be known about all of your kids at any point, at any given time. So again, Mercury allows you that ability to just be the most amazing multitasker. You can do 10,000 things at once. You can juggle 10,000 things at once. You may also be a parent, that provides your child with options. So, those options could relate to having a certain amount of money where they can do certain things that only money can buy. You might expose them to art, to music, different ways of self-expression, different ways of being creative. You could be a parent that also gives their children practical options of what they can do to solve their problems, because at the end of the day, Virgo is also an earth sign, so they're quite grounded, and they're also practically inclined to guide their kids as well. Summer is my favorite time of the year, which brings me to briefly discuss the summer solstice. I hope I'm saying that correctly, because there's no master of pronunciation in these streets, so please forgive me. All right. So the summer solstice is, it's the transition from action towards nourishment. So whatever you may have planted in other seasons or written out in your diary, any manifestations that you may have wanted to execute, now is the time, or rather when it is the summer solstice, now would be the time to nurture and water whatever it is that you want to achieve. So it's almost like a pregnancy, how the sperm would infiltrate the egg and how the womb now nurtures the growth of that embryo from that point, to give you a more visual analogy. I just also wanted to mention this amazing time because the summer solstice is actually aligned with the sun's energy and the sun's element of passion, of fire and drive, of getting things moving and just being that person, that guy or that girl, and moving towards the things that you actually want. Because let's not forget that our ancestors were, the way that they were moving according to seasons. That's why they were able to be balanced a lot of the times. They didn't just do things because wowza, let us chance. No, they actually looked to the stars to be guided on how certain things needed to be done. I think that's why they were able to live the lives that they led for so long. So yes, the summer solstice is aligned with the sun's energy and its element, which is of passion, of fire and drive. And actually a nice quote from Forever Conscious that read, the summer solstice is the highest point of energy for the year. We are literally bathed in the full power of the sun and everything is illuminated. In my next video, I will be doing the moon in all its glory. On that note, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, what I may have left out and any other information that you feel may be useful to us, to know, because at the end of the day, we're all learning, we all are just connecting based off of what we need to know and what we can expose each other to. Show me some love and subscribe to my channel. Again, your time spent is much appreciated. Till next time, you know what you do. So keep doing what you do. Peace, love, and most of all, light. I'm out.